Today we're talking about Congressional District 15. That's the old Ruben Hinojosa spot. He's not going to be running for re-election. He's going to be stepping down, retiring. And one of the two men who are running for that spot is this man beside me, Tim Westley, on the Republican side. It's been a while since we last talked. Last time we chatted was around the primary time.
Yes.
What have you been up to since then?
Winning.
Winning. Hashtag winning, right?
Yes, absolutely. But we've been campaigning and going throughout the district and meeting some of the constituents and making sure we understand their needs and concerns as we move forward towards November's election.
Now, do you feel that it's a different game going into the general election than it is in the primary?
Absolutely. One of the things we want to do, we want to make sure that we're reaching people. During the primary, we were focused mainly on our conservative voters to make sure that we were addressing their issues and not moving from our conservative stance. We want to make sure that we also address the needs of our Democrats throughout the district as well, to see what is it that we can find common ground on to make sure that we're trying to represent the district as a whole.
And have you found any common ground between the Republican side and the Democrat side, or maybe a bunch of those independent voters?
Yes. One thing we know for sure when it comes down to health and health care, we know that in this portion of the district, in particular, that's going to be something that's extremely important. Also, border security, regardless of whether you're a conservative or a liberal, border security is going to be an issue. And by all means, economics is going to be an issue. So that's going to be common ground. And finally, when we look at things such as education, that's going to be something that's of common ground for both Democrats and Republicans.
Oh, to sum up what you had just said, you had mentioned the border, you mentioned healthcare, you mentioned education. Have these issues changed since the primary, or have these things been issues you've been trying to raise awareness with since the beginning?
Ultimately, they're literally about the same. We hadn't seen much change. Of course, we see discussions at the presidential level about some of these issues, but as far as the makeup of Hidalgo County and this part of the region, those things have fairly remained the same. Of course, the local issue with the hospital district, that's been something that some of the possible constituents have brought to my attention as a concern for them, and that's been something I've been able to address as well.
What are some of those concerns that they've brought up about the health care district?
The main concerns I've heard is that they do not want any more taxes. And as I've discussed in the past with other interviews, we want to make sure that we're not overtaxing our people. And so what we find is that with the amount of people that hadn't been able to pay taxes, which is over 30%, and the amount of people that are challenged when it comes to income, we see that that's going to be another undue burden on the people. And so that's some of the things that's been discussed between myself and the constituents here in this county.
Those that have been for the healthcare district, they talk about giving care to indigenous citizens of the Rio Grande Valley and stuff like that. What are the current means of distributing health care to these kinds of people, and why are they pushing for a change versus something that you might be proposing?
Okay. Right now, there's already money that's coming from the federal government to take care of some of the indigenous as far as their health care is concerned. As we look, we will find that if we do not take care of some of the issues that precede this, i.e. we see that over $500 million in some cases, some numbers show, has been $500 million has been spent in the state of Texas on indigenous health care. A lot of that is going to be taking place here in the valley. And so what we can look at options as far as making sure that we provide better education when it comes down to health care. We know that in the valley we have a lot of diabetes issues. We have a lot of issues when it comes to the heart and the care of that. So we want to make sure that we're providing incentives for better eating habits and things of that nature that can help to thwart some of the issues that are going to be concerning the health care. And so those are just some of the things that we can do from a federal level, make sure that there is funding available to educate the people and help them with their health, and that's going to help to keep them out of the hospital system in some instances.
Let's change gears for a second. Let's talk border security. Where did you stand back during the primary, and has anything changed your view on that position?
No, nothing's changed. At that point, I realized you hear a lot about adding more Border Patrol agents, and that's going to be important. However, that's going to be a small stopgap. We want to make sure that we continue to provide better technology, want to make sure we work on our infrastructure, and more importantly, as I mentioned back then, we want to make sure we uphold the laws that we already have, because if we don't uphold the laws and stop any avenue of allowing any type of amnesty, then we're going to continue to have an issue whereby people have incentive to come into our nation illegally. And so that's going to be a battle that the Border Patrol agents are going to continually be up against, and sometimes we see, as we look at our border now, now they're going to be against and not being successful. So we want to make sure we uphold the laws and keep those laws strong. And so that hadn't changed again since the primary.
Now, there were some talks about throwing about $1 billion our way. Would you be for something like that or against it?
When we look at the money, again, if we're going to get funds, what are we going to do with it? I'll be for it if we're going to have a strategic plan as to what's going to take place with it. Again, if we're looking at infrastructure, if we're looking at better facilities for our agents, if we're looking at increasing the amount of boots on the ground, that's going to be fine. But we also, again, want to look at, are we going to have enough to put towards different technologies to assist us in fighting this battle?
All righty, good enough. How about education? Let's talk about education for a little bit. Can you refresh our audience's mind? Where did you stand on education way back during the primary, and has that changed?
When it comes to our students, that's our future. When it comes to the kids, that is our future. So I believe that we should spend wisely. We should also invest in things long term. We see that a lot of students tend to suffer. This was my position before the primary. It still is. A lot of students that tend to suffer need additional help. So I believe that we can take funding that is raised, that is generated, to ensure that we can have a stopgap there, help the parents, provide additional incentives for tutoring for the parents so that they can help the children. Also, as we look at the monies that's coming in, we know that on average, each student has about $10,000 to $11,000 on their head. In other words, that's what their value is when it comes down to the amount of money that typically follows them for any student in the United States public schools. I believe that if we take that funding and we provide incentive to those students that as they progress through school and get to high school, if they've completed their high school credits that's needed by the time they get to their junior year, for instance, then they should be able to take that money with them and pay for junior college or something of that nature. And I believe that's going to provide incentive early on, and that's going to carry through middle school and high school. And imagine if a student can take an average of $10,000 to $11,000 with them, that can pay for junior college, and that can knock down that $1 trillion in deficit that we have with our student loan debt.
How do you feel about standardized testing? That's been a good, pressure point of issues recently. There's a lot of people against standardized testing because you have teachers that are just teaching for the tests and not actually teaching. How do you feel?
We have to have some type of measures in order to see if the students are getting what they need to get. However, being one that's taught in public schools, I know that those standardized tests can be a handcuff of sort, and so we have to allow the teachers to teach. I believe that if we were to look at it as far as the districts are concerned and see what levels of standards they can have, the standardized test can begin to fade away, yet we're going to need some type of way to gauge whether they're doing their jobs. And if we put that back in the hands of the superintendents, put it back in the hands of the districts in general, then I think we can see some progress.
All right, I'm going to bring up a question I asked you during the primary. So you're from Seguin. How do the issues up in Seguin match any of the issues that we have down here in the Rio Grande Valley? How do you find a compromise between the two regions?
Actually, I'm in Selma, which is right outside of Seguin. And basically what we still see similar issues in that in the state of Texas, we see a lot of veterans. And so the issue about veterans and veterans health care, that's going to be something that's going to be synonymous with the northern portion of the district as it is with the southern portion of the district down here in Hidalgo County. The economy, as far as the economic growth, that's going to be an issue that's going to be synonymous with both the northern and the southern portion of the district. So those things are going to be things that are similar and that are of concern for the constituents regardless of where they're at.
All righty. You had the last word. Any words you want to impart on our audience?
Yes. My goal, and it has been, is to fight for we the people. As you look at my campaign has been about we the people, and that's all people, whether you're Republican, whether you're Democrat, Libertarian, or Independent. My goal is to do what our founding fathers intended for us to do, and that's to have someone from among the populace, among the 99%, to go to Washington, D.C. to represent the best values of the 99%. And that's my goal, to go and represent every person, regardless of what party they may be with, to go and fight for Hidalgo County and fight for the betterment of our society and make this a better year that's coming in and a better society for us. Again, my name is Tim Westley for U.S. Congress.
That's Tim Westley for CD 15, Congressional District 15.